Since the end of the 2000 season, 2 NFL landmarks have become lost treasures. Memorial Stadium in Baltimore and Three Rivers Stadium in Pittsburgh were both demolished. And when those 2 ballparks went down, 66 years of football history went down with them. It made me think of that Frank Sinatra song, "There Used to Be a Ballpark." I know the song's about baseball, but really it's about the emotional connection of a town and its team, whatever the sport. At the heart of that connection is the ballpark. And I can't think of many places where the heart beats stronger or louder than Three Rivers Stadium and Memorial Stadium. They called Memorial Stadium the world's largest outdoor insane asylum. It was an old-fashioned ballpark where the fans were close to the action, and that feeling of closeness carried over to the players.
Baltimore Memorial Stadium. Yeah, that was a homey kind of place. People seemed to enjoy going to the games, and they had their old friends, and they talked. And it was like a college atmosphere.
Hey, program here, championship.
At Memorial Stadium, even the vendors dressed in team colors. I'd never seen that before. And the ushers were the most courteous in the league.
Hey, 4, you know where it is?
No.
I'll show you right where it is.
Hey, great.
Be careful of the court.
I remember the fog that used to roll in there. It was so thick that some days you could hardly see the row houses behind the fence. It was hard on our cameramen because sometimes the visibility was almost zero. I still don't know how Johnny Unitas ever saw Raymond Berry on this play or how Berry ever caught the ball. They should have made the Hall of Fame on this one touchdown alone. I always thought the fog was just moisture blowing in from the Chesapeake. But after seeing this footage, I have a new theory. Cigarettes. Check these crowd shots. Everywhere you look, someone's smoking. We even caught one of the Colts cheerleaders smoking. You know, she'd get fired for that today. And look, here's our camera crew lighting up. And you know what? These guys don't even smoke. It was just something about that stadium, I guess. No wonder the view from the upper deck looked like this.
Come on, get him hot, nice and hot over there. Take him inside.
Memorial Stadium was located in a row house neighborhood of Baltimore, so a lot of people just walked to the games. You couldn't get lost. All you had to do was follow the scent of crab cakes, and you'd find the grand old lady of 33rd Street. The first Colts game was played here in 1947, and some of the NFL's greatest dramas unfolded on this field. In 1998, I toured the old ballpark with 2 men who helped write its history, Tom Matte and Lenny Moore. Tom, you were explaining that the field curved up here or something?
Well, Jimmy would go down the hill, and then all of a sudden he'd make that catch in the corner of the end zone.
Right over here is Orr's Corner.
Orrsville,
Right,
and he'd just slide up there and then slide back down.
I don't think it will ever happen again, Steve. I don't think it'll ever happen. The kind of camaraderie that the fans and the players had, it was a very special time here.
Yeah. The stadium had been empty for a year, and it was sad to see it falling apart. It was especially emotional for Lenny, who feels the stadium's importance extends far beyond the playing field.
In the community of Baltimore, a lot of things changed, and I think a lot of that was due to what took place right here in the stadium. It was like a meeting place, because here in Baltimore, things weren't the best when I came here. You know, sort of a divide. Blacks over here, whites over here, and this kind of thing. And in this stadium, I think, was a catalyst for bringing people together.
This stadium, this field really represents the soul of the city of Baltimore. This was the one place of common ground. And I think unlike stadiums today, here everybody had to wait in the same line for the same urinal. You bought from the same hot dog vendor. Stadiums today, they're very class-centric. You've got sky boxes, club seats, and then you go down to the end zone. So it really was common ground, and I think what the history of this stadium, both with the Colts and the Orioles, it created a venue for civic pride. The Colts and the Orioles provided the common ground for both CEOs and cabbies to have something to talk about, black and white, rich and poor. And this was the context where all people came together.
Joe Ehrman experienced firsthand the coming together of the Baltimore fans. Now that's Joe in the middle of a wild celebration after the Colts clinched the AFC Eastern title in 1975. When I think about the Baltimore Colts fans, that's what I remember. I remember a wonderful cross-section of blue-collar workers and corporate executives, young people, old people, all joined as one, cheering for the Colts and having a ball.
I remember they had this cheerleader, this one guy who would spell out C-O-L-T, you know, and he'd make himself into an S, and he used to get up on the ledge and do that Colts cheer 50 times a game.
The big wheel and the spoke were just two regular guys who one day in 1975 jumped up and led a cheer that made them famous.
You hear all the team talk about the crowd enthusiasm. The crowd does a good job, but there's some people that sit there and they're afraid to cheer because of the way they are. And we feel that, you know, we get these people going. You know, and when we get them going, you've heard it out here today, right? And we get them all going.
Memorial Stadium only cost $5 million to build, so it was a no-frills kind of a place. It sat 57,000 fans, none of them comfortably. The old wooden bleachers helped one enterprising lady make a lot of money during football season.
Stadium seats. Watch the game in comfort. Stadium seats. Get your stadium seats right here. Keep the splinters out. Keep the splinters out. Stadium seats right here.
The seats were hard, the seats were rough. It really wasn't a comfort stadium, but she was something special to us. You look at the construction of her, she was built in sections, slapped together, but she always had the mystique of our grand old lady of 33rd Street.
Baltimore was one of the first places where people talked about home field advantage. In the years from 1957 through 71, the Colts had the NFL's highest home winning percentage, and the crowd support was a big part of that. The most visible and vocal fan was Loudy Loudenslager.
Come on, Dave!
Along with his wife, Flo, Loudy would greet the Colts at the airport when they returned from every away game, win or lose.
Come on, Dave!
You could always find Loudy on the field, but he wasn't alone. There were more people on the field at Memorial Stadium than anywhere else in the league. Here you could say the fans really were in the game. Now look at this scene from the 1975 season. There are more fans than players on the Colts bench. But what you saw expressed in Baltimore was a genuine love between the fans and the team. It's a bond that, despite the loss of the Colts and now the loss of the stadium, will be felt in this community forever.
Yeah, I remember that Colts marching band.
Dad might be a little off-key, but he has the right idea. The Colts band was a big part of that Baltimore spirit.
At the stadium, when you come out of the tunnel, they had the bands, cheerleaders lined out, and you ran out, and they played that Colts song, and it really pumped me up. I ran out of there 13, 14 years, I don't know how many times, but the enthusiasm, if I felt bad as soon as I got out there and I heard the crowd and I heard the band, it picked me up. It put me where I should be.
The band was founded for the original Colts, the All-American Conference Colts of 1947. The band actually stayed together and continued to perform in the 11 years when there was no football in Baltimore. The band played at games in other NFL cities and kept the spirit of Baltimore football alive until the Ravens filled the void in 1996. The band is now known as the Marching Ravens, but in its heart, it will always be the Colts band.
The band became, I feel, the musical heart of this team. They were your dentists. They were your doctors. We've had a priest at one time, helicopter pilots, housewives, insurance salesmen, hot dog vendors. You name it, we've had it. We even have a gentleman who was played for the Russian Air Force marching band. So it's like a family. You join together, you become part of the family.
An NFL Films cameraman named Dave Ryan was part of the Colts band too. It really was like a family, especially for John Zeman. In 1969, John met a Colts cheerleader named Charlene Wills and married her.
My wife became the flag line instructor eventually. At the same time, she was, with birth with my son, Christopher, with child. And we had an exhibition game on a Friday night, and her water started to break right at the stadium. So we had to get her out of there real fast, and he was born the next day. So my son almost was born right on 33rd Street.
John Zeman's house is a shrine to Baltimore sports history. You walk through his basement, and it's like being back in Memorial Stadium. John saw the Colts era come and go in Baltimore, so he felt mixed emotions when he led the band onto the field for the final game at Memorial Stadium. He enjoyed seeing the old Colt legends back on the field, but still, there was a definite sadness in the air.
On that last game, I got a lot of teasing from the younger people in the band. Hey, John, you having flashbacks? You know, like I said, you do think you're back in 1958? And I said, yes, I am. I said, yes, I am. I said, because I'm getting a second chance to see my heroes on this field one more time.
We shot this in black and white so it would have a kind of 1950s feel. The old Colts ran one last play, and fittingly, Lenny Moore took it into the end zone. And the big wheel was there, bigger than ever, to lead one more cheer. When the ceremony ended, it seemed like no one wanted to leave. The former players stayed and posed for pictures. It was as if no one wanted to let go. The last people in the stadium were the band members, and when they left the field, John Zeman lagged behind.
There was one time I made sure I was the last band member out of that stadium. I was going to be the last. And I walked out, with some of the members of the equipment crew, and I just said, okay, guys, go a few steps ahead of me. And they went through the gate, and I just turned around and said goodbye to her.
In the 1970s, the Colts defensive line was known as the Looney Tunes, and Joe Ehrman, number 76, was the looniest tune of all.
Let me ask you, you have the reputation, when we ask it around, you're one of the team clowns. You're one of the guys that keeps everybody loose and up, and yet you seem quite serious now. Is it getting down to that part of the season when you just have to be serious about it?
Yeah, I think so. This is a serious game.
Oh, yeah. You can see Joe is real serious before every game. Joe is just a fun-loving guy whose talent and personality helped the Colts go from worst to first in the AFC East.
Beautiful. Keep it going. You got it, bro.
Okay.
I'm too tired to talk. First time in my life.
But by the time Joe's football career ended in 1981, he was a different person. He found religion and became a minister in Baltimore. A few months ago, he brought his sons, Barney and Joe, back to Memorial Stadium for one final visit.
I can't remember my last game here.
It was like 100 years ago.
That wasn't quite 100 years ago. This field was built on tremendous tradition because you had third and fourth generation fans. You had, they actually passed down the season tickets, and you had an awful lot of men that had been taken there by their dads and are now taking their sons.
The Colts always left the field through the baseball dugout, and it looked like they were stepping down into a mine shaft. We wondered if 20 years later, Joe could still find his way through that dark, winding tunnel.
All right, well, this is where we came out of, and let's go in here, and we'll go down here. No. There's a ton of water in there. And there used to always be water. Yeah, jeez. Well, we'll try another way. Wow, look at this.
We found a passageway on the other side of the field, but it was still pretty treacherous. Our crew had only a small handheld light to find its way through the debris.
Watch the nail. See the nail, Joe?
No one had ventured down here in years. It was a little spooky. We thought we had stumbled into our own Blair Witch project, but we were determined to find the Colts locker room.
That would be the clubhouse room there. There's an old dryer where they used to do the towels. Yeah, here's the locker room right here. And we just had a long, open face kind of separate lockers with hooks on them. But it really looks different now. It was a nasty place, though. It was always filled with cockroaches and very dirty all the time.
From there, we went upstairs to see the place where Joe first met his wife, Paula. Believe it or not, Joe and Paula met through a blind date promotion arranged by a Baltimore disc jockey named Commander Jim.
But right here was where I met your mother. That was right around that door is a locker room, and Mommy was right here. And I can remember I was standing here signing autographs, and I had no idea what she looked like. We had talked over the phone, and I remember kind of looking up, and I could tell by the way she was looking at me that she was the one, and so we introduced right here. I had left her 2 tickets, and then we went in there for a big team party. It was the last game of the season. We beat the Patriots to win the division, go into the playoffs, and we had a great party in there. And Mom and I have been together ever since. Mommy's seats were right about up there. I think that was section 135, and all the player wives used to sit up there in the upper deck. Today they give them 50-yard line seats down front, but back then it was all the way up there. It was where Mom used to sit for all the games.
To this day, whenever I think about the upper deck of Memorial Stadium, I think about Donald Kroner. Now, he's the pilot who tried to land his private plane on the field after a 1976 playoff game and instead wound up crashing into the upper deck. And the most amazing thing was, no one got hurt, not even Donald Kroner.
The plane was buzzing the whole week before practice. There was a pilot that while we were practicing was dropping toilet paper rolls on our practice. Yeah. And after the game, he landed a plane right in the upper deck there. And we were in the locker room, and they said, what was that noise? And somebody said, a plane just hit the stadium.
I was filming in the Colts locker room when I heard about the crash. Listen, you can hear 2 reporters talking about it in the background.
No, it's a crash down.
Well, we heard that, and we ran upstairs to see for ourselves. We were able to find an eyewitness who was still shaken by what he had seen.
What happened here today, sir? What happened?
Well, it's very difficult to say at this time. We'd rather not make any pertinent comment other than the fact that an airplane crashed in the stands and almost wiped out the stadium. They had to drag the pilot out of the aircraft as fuel was spewing from the tanks all over the seats. Other than that, we really have nothing to say.
A quarter of a century later, Joe Ehrman and his sons were back in that same upper deck, taking one last look before it all came down.
I'm really thankful I had the opportunity to do this. I'm glad you guys got to come today. Because as soon as it'll be all gone. It'll be all gone. You'll be able to tell your kids there used to be a stadium here someday.
Yeah. Almost at the 13-yard line, third and less than a yard.
Baltimore's Memorial Stadium sat vacant for 3 years after the Ravens played their final game here in 1997. The old ballpark was plagued by vandals and overrun by rats. Finally, the state decided to tear it down and use the land for senior citizen housing. But former Maryland governor and Baltimore mayor William Donald Schaefer opposed the plan, and he visited the stadium with our crew in February.
Just to see this magnificent stadium being torn down for non-use makes me sad. Now, it's so easy to tear something down. It's so hard to keep things up. It's hard. And when you got an opportunity to save something and reuse it, that's even better.
Schaefer's plan was to convert the stadium into a retail development. He felt shops and restaurants could be built into the existing structure. As a Colts fan, He had a real affection for the place and tried his best to save it. But by the end of the month, the state was moving ahead with a demolition. Since the ballpark was in a residential area, they decided against using explosives. They chose to knock it down the old-fashioned way, with a wrecking ball.
I grew up on Cold Spring Lane and York Road, which is about, I guess, a little less than a mile from here. I sat right there in the last section, in section 11, which was the 45-yard line. I was here to the very end during the good years with John Unitas. A lot of sentimentality here, a lot of memories.
How hard is it to separate your own memories from the task at hand here?
Well, when you're doing the job, you just try not to think about it. It just has to be a building that you're taking down. We have a contract. We have families to feed. It's our job. Every day that we're here, people stop and take pictures. Some people get teary-eyed. A lot of people ask questions. A lot of sentimentality here. A lot of memories.
Does anybody say to you, don't you feel like a bad guy doing this?
Not really. Not really. I guess they might think it, but they haven't said it. And I'm glad they don't. But the reality is, the old girl's tired. You know, we hit it with a ball and it's just falling apart. The concrete's very thin, it's brittle. A lot of the reinforcing steel has become exposed to the weather over the years because of deteriorating concrete. It's showing a lot of deterioration. It's time.
The preservationists, led by former Governor Schaefer, made a good point. They said the stadium was built as a memorial to the Maryland war veterans, and it was wrong to tear the whole thing down. The mayor of Baltimore agreed, and he promised a compromise. He said the familiar facade with the memorial inscription would be left standing, but the rest of the stadium would be leveled. It took almost 4 months, but the grand old lady of 33rd Street finally did come down. Joe Ehrman and his sons were among the last to visit and say goodbye.
But this is where Unitas and Moore were. Well, that's cool, huh?
Yeah.
That's really cool. Looks like a war took place, doesn't it?
It's a mess.
It is a mess. I think there's a thing called a theology of place. Being a minister, there's sacred ground, and it comes from an old Hebrew prophet, Jacob, that had a dream where these angels ascended and descended, and wherever God works out his business and people work out their business with God, is sacred place. And as a minister, one of the things I do is funerals, and I can't tell you the number of funerals where I've done where that either the Colt fight song has been played by a bagpipe, a lone bagpipe, or they played the tape of the Colt fighting song. But when you tell the story of Baltimore, woven all through the fabric of this century will be the story of Memorial Stadium and the Baltimore Colts.
The weatherman has certainly cooperated in Baltimore. We've got a jam-packed stadium, 57,557. And this game has been sold out since the day the Baltimore Colts won the Western Division title.